So, as I was saying, a little sleep deprived. I'll try to tell this the best I can. I might bounce back and forth with the timeline slightly, but really it's just a conversation I had with two Christians that accosted me. Anyway, no, they stopped me, gave me a little card. I'd go pick it up, but whatever, it's the same bullshit card as any little card. It says come to a Christmas play, blah blah blah. They're hosting it down the street. They have a very funky church. They do try to market it that way. Not just because I'm not Christian, I think based on my age group and interests and stuff, I can safely say it's, from my perspective anyway, I'll just speak on it for myself, not working. But I had never spoken to anyone from there before, and they were both quite friendly, but so, yeah, no fault there. So anyway, I'll get into this. So they approach me, they hand me the card, and they say, oh yeah, I know it's a Christmas play, blah blah blah, and I'm like, oh well, I'll tell it the same way I told it to them. Well, I don't really celebrate Christmas exactly. I mean, I go to my mom's house, she's Christian, I guess you could say, and at least the very basics. I'm sure many Christians, and as I've pointed out, yoga and people like that would not consider her true, but good for her, she's a lot more respectable that way. So anyway, they approach me and I say, well, I don't really practice Christmas, and I do go to Christmas dinner, and I just really stopped the whole gift exchange thing. I'm not cheap, I don't really dig the I didn't even get to the point before he's like, oh, you don't like the commercialization of it exactly? I'm like, well, no, I don't. And I still give gifts to some of the kids in the family and whatever, but I don't really like the way Christmas is, and the waste involved and stuff. It just seems kind of hollow, and so rather quickly. Now let me first quickly actually back up. There's two guys. One is taller, very friendly looking, clean cut, blah blah blah, and he was calmer, seemed quite humble, very friendly. There's a smaller, quite thin guy, probably about a quarter my weight. No, seriously, but no, he was pretty thin. I know that's not possible, but he's pretty thin, and so he's short, pretty wide staring eyes. Definitely a guy that as Christians would say, is feeling the love of Christ. I'm sure many atheists and others and would honestly say he looks. I mean, they would probably just out and out say that guy's fucking crazy, but I would honestly say he did seem maybe just slightly mentally ill. And I'm not going to get into the whole is religion mental illness, but I don't know, it does ask you to accept some, mainly the big three monotheisms. I really have nothing against Buddhism. In fact, I'm mostly a Buddhist. The big three monotheisms are pretty crazy. So anyway, I'll just leave it there and let people make up their own minds on that one for themselves. So very quickly, the little smaller guy gets into God's law. So very quickly, and I listen, and I just, at a certain point I say, who says it's God's law? Well, it's God's word. Where is it from? Oh, the Bible. And I'm like, written by men, inspired by God. Well, who's to say they're inspired by God? I mean, wouldn't that mean the Quran is also? And he's like, look, okay, you have a murderer, okay? I'm like, all right, okay, this murderer is on trial, and he says to the judge, okay, judge, I'm a good guy, I gave $1 to a homeless guy, should you maybe let me off? And I'm like, well, no. He's like, and that's, God is the ultimate arbitrator, and God decides. And I'm like, well, hold on, you can still be a good person without God. And so he gets into how you can't necessarily be a good person without God, which I find totally, absolutely ridiculous. And so anyway, I even plugged my video original saying it does not compute. So anyway, we talk about that for a bit, and I explain that, like, you know, there's lots of ways to be ethical. You don't necessarily have to be a Christian, and you know, I did enjoy pointing out certain things about the connections between what some of they were saying and Islam. That was interesting. But anyway, so we talk about that for a bit. We talk about, I think, Buddhism just briefly. Anyway, we get talking about women, and somehow we get talking about women, and basically I'm like, well, oh no, that's how, because we're talking about morality and Jesus. I say, look, you know, I like Christians who talk about, you know, doing good works and being kind and all that, and that I appreciate, and you know, that's what I think you guys should focus on more than converting people and all that, and that's good stuff to do. Good works in your community, you know, that's what, you know, good philosophy is all about. Well, not all about, but somewhat about things like that. So I tried to at least impress that upon them strongly, and he said, well, we have to evangelize. We're called to evangelize. And so we get talking about morality, and I say, you know, I like the whole, you know, Jesus, the idea of Jesus being generous and kind and whatever, and we won't even get into Jesus holding a sword and other things that I should have really brought up maybe. But the little guy's like, you know, he's going off about let he who has not sinned cast the first stone, and he's like, he explains more of it, you know, oh, it's a good thing I have the whole prepper, or the whole, you know, course on it. I couldn't miss that. He explains how, you know, Jesus too was saying, you know, oh, she's actually an adulterer, oh, maybe, oh, condemn her then, we should condemn her, and he's like, but, you know, and then he's like, but he who, you know, who didn't sin, blah, blah, blah. So so he's like, he gets into explaining, so, and later when he's talking, and so first of all, I'm thinking, okay, so a woman is being stoned for being promiscuous. Go on. Anyway, madness. So he fucking explains how, oh, and you know, he talked to her later, oh, you know, you had this many men, and you know, this man's your husband, but you know, you're not even faithful to this man who's not your husband, but you also, you know, claimed a relationship with, or some fucking nonsense. And I'm thinking, yeah, okay, so women under this are like, you know, property, like, hey, that's my woman, you know. And so, you know, I bring up the Promise Keepers, and you know, and I do bring up the fact to them, look, I know there's a vast difference between, you know, say a Southern Baptist and an Anglican, but and the calmer, more, in my opinion, humble guy was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of Christianity today that, I don't think he used the word crazy, but he said is just right messed up or something. And on 2 occasions, I don't remember exactly what on the second occasion, but on 2 occasions he did pretty much express that, look, you know, there's some pretty nutty, for lack of a better word, Christians, and you know, Christians and Christian sects he just does not agree with, and thinks are just, you know, doing awful things and whatever. So that's good, and that was acceptable to me. That was an important marker of maturity and intelligence, even though some of the other things we discussed weren't quite sure. So what is this, part 3 now? I guess part 2, because part 1 doesn't count, so